You're watching The Sports Objective, the podcast for Pirates.
That stadium is going to be rocking, and heaven help whoever walks in there to play us.
Sustained effort and violence, you play your ass off.
You're watching the Pirate Preview on The Sports Objective. Join us every Tuesday night on YouTube Live as we're joined by beat writers and other media members as we take a look at what lies ahead for the Pirates. Now, here are the guys.
It is a first down. Pirates.
Welcome into the Pirate Preview right here on the Sports Objective. I bring the guys in. Kyle from LaGrange Barber. How are you, sir? I don't know if you
Kyle is not with us tonight at the moment.
Yeah, Bubba, how are you?
I'm doing well, Dave, and I know Kyle will be with us shortly. But very intrigued to see how the Pirates will respond after last week's disappointing senior day, the 42-3 loss to the Houston Cougars. We're playing someone who nearly beat Houston at Houston, and that is, of course, the Temple Owls.
No doubt about it. Very excited to have our guest on from Owls Daily 24/7 Sports. That's Ryan Wallen. Ryan, welcome back in.
Thanks, guys, for having me. It's always a pleasure. Love getting to talk some football, basketball. Anytime I can be on with you guys, always a fun time.
And for Bubba's sake, we're going to throw in some pro wrestling too, if you don't mind, towards the end before we sign off. So, but by the way, for all you guys, I want to mention and all our fans, Pirate Nation, and those in Temple. Is that Owl Nation? Is that what you have? Are you guys? Is that what you call it?
Yeah, we'll go with that.
Okay. All right. But everybody, I want to wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving. We've got a lot to be thankful for. Also, want to send our prayers out to right up the road for me, 2 hours away at that Walmart in Chesapeake. All the families lost their loved ones and the people shopping. I just can't imagine that. So not to start off the show a negative Nelly or Debbie Downer, but we're praying for those folks. And that's a whole nother show, as they say. We're not going to talk about gun violence tonight, but we are. I think we would be a big mistake not to mention that and to think about all those families. Ryan, obviously a big game for both teams. And Temple, the one thing I've been telling fans is that don't follow the game as close as we all do. You guys, the second half of the season, what in the world? You guys have really turned around. And we're happy for you because you are always so good to us. But and it's also good for the league when Temple's better.
Yeah, I think it was just early on in the season you saw those growing pains of having a true freshman quarterback at the helm, a first-year head coach, a new staff, a new system being implemented with the team. I think you saw that earlier on. That's why things just weren't necessarily clicking. I mean, the schedule didn't do them any favors early on as far as some of their early conference matchups. And this last month of the season, we didn't expect to even be in some of these games that Temple has found themselves being in, having to close with Cincinnati, Houston, ECU. That's a rough stretch of games right there. And I didn't think that this was going to be even a chance that Temple would be maybe competitive with ECU heading into the final week of the season. But maybe this is the week that Temple can pull off that big surprise victory that people don't expect them to get this season, and that could really just give them some momentum heading into next year.
Ryan, one of the major strides you've seen with Coach Drayton's ball club is offensively. And you have a very famous last name as your signal caller with Warner. E.J. Warner. So tell us about the way the offense has progressed. Last week was tough against a very stout Cincinnati D, as always, 23-3 loss. But the 2 weeks prior against South Florida, a 54-28 win and a 43-36 loss at Houston. And the Owls had put up a combined 90 points.
Yeah, EJ has really shown even from his first start that he has what it takes to be possibly the next great Temple quarterback. If he stays at Temple for more than a couple years. Obviously, with the transfer portal, anything can happen nowadays. But you presume that he's going to be the guy now because he's been handed the team and he is the guy. That they went to him early on in the year when things with Dewan Mathis weren't working out and the offense looked stagnant, and he immediately came in and showed a spark. He shows the mechanics like his father had, that he is a very accurate passer. He has very good composure and awareness in the pocket. Um, Obviously, has thrown 11 interceptions, which you expect those types of mistakes as a freshman trying to do a little too much. Maybe the game he still hasn't adjusted fully to the speed of the game yet. But for a kid that was 18 at the start of the season and now is now 19 years old, I think he's doing everything that you would hope that a true freshman would. He leads the nation in passing yards as a true freshman, amongst those true freshman quarterbacks with more than 2,500 yards. So I think that's a good sign. He's already broken PJ Walker's single game passing record for a true freshman at Temple, and he's broken his single season record for a true freshman at Temple. So when you start throwing yourself in there with a guy who's now in the league playing on Sundays for the Carolina Panthers, I'm sure you guys have heard a lot about that this year with that whole debacle with the Panthers. But then you put your name in the hat with Walker, who is possibly Temple's greatest quarterback of all time. That's good early signs.
So, tell us about some of that skill talent that in the EJ Warner is throwing to.
Yeah, right now Temple's a little banged up at the wide receiver position. They've been most of the year. Jose Barbone's been the most consistent guy, as you can tell by the numbers. I'm sure that he has 59 receptions and nobody's even 22 catches close to him. And he leads the team with 750 receiving yards. Has been plagued by drops at some points this season, but he's been the guy that really has built that connection with Warner. Adonicus Sanders has shown flashes at times of being a very solid player, being that deep threat, big target that Warner likes to air it up to occasionally. But he's been plagued by a knee injury over the last month or so, has caused him to miss a game here and there. Not really sure yet if he's going to play this week. I would assume that he's probably going to try to give it a go since it is his last college football game coming up against ECU. So we'll see how that goes. And then Ahmad Anderson Jr. has been another guy who kind of stepped up after losing his job this past off season and has kind of come in and shown that he has the potential to be a playmaker for Temple, even though, he's had some problems with ball security. But he's been solid. He's made some plays. Just wish he would have been a little faster and maybe Temple could have knocked off Navy last month before that game would have went to overtime. But other than that, they have two really solid tight ends in David Martin Robinson and Jordan Smith also, who have both done a really solid job at just catching the ball, making plays over the middle when they need to, when, Warner needs to check the ball down quick and receivers can't get open, because that has been an issue with Temple, that some of these receivers can't get open sometimes and create separation. So I think Temple's trying to address that with their recruiting, but as of right now, you got to play with the hand you're dealt, right? And I think Temple's done a decent job at doing that, especially like you mentioned over the course of the last couple games. Putting up 36 points against Houston, I don't think was something a lot of people expected, and having a chance to win that game in the final minute. Again, 54 points against USF. That was an impressive showing, albeit, USF having a down year. But it's still Division I football in the American nonetheless, and that was an impressive showing.
No doubt about it. Ryan, a sidebar really fast, because you guys do a great job at Owls Daily 24/7. You cover Temple. How is recruiting going? Being you have a first-year head coach, obviously the bloodline, the life of the program is recruiting. How are things going there?
Yeah, they have 18 commits currently as it stands, and they've not lost any of their verbal commits as of right now. So that's always a good sign that this coaching staff has kept their verbal commits that they've had, and some of them going back a pretty long time back towards early in the summer, so that's good sign. A lot of emphasis on the offensive side of the ball is what we've seen so far. And I think that makes sense considering that last year when this staff came in, they really focused heavily on the defensive side of the ball. They focused a lot on the linebackers and D line. And I think you've seen them reap the benefits of that this year, having the depth, having the ability to rotate guys in and out in the front seven. And they've really played well in that front seven this year on defense. Obviously, the struggles mostly this year have been on the offensive side of the ball. So they've made it a priority to go out and get some playmakers. They have 2 running backs currently committed, I believe 5 wide receivers committed, and then 4 offensive linemen. So you can see the emphasis there in itself is, building around EJ Warner.
Ryan, just wanted to talk to you a little bit. When I saw this Temple team last year, it was really a very uncharacteristic Temple team. You guys had been so good for 10 years or so, going back to the Matt Rule days. And last year I saw a program in disarray. And I'll be honest with you, Ryan, early this season, as I was going through our schedule, you kind of go through like we all do, and you look at your schedule and you say, okay, this is going to be a win. This is going to be a loss, so on and so forth. And I had this Temple game. I'll be very honest. I saw it as a win. But as this season has gone on, this Temple team has improved. Stan Drayton, you have to be thrilled with the job he's doing, right? I mean, he's steadied the ship, and I feel like he really has this program going in the right direction. I mean, talk to me just a little bit about, Ryan, when Stan Drayton was hired, what was your initial thought, and how do you feel that he's doing as a head coach?
Yeah, I think my initial thought was a lot like a lot of the Temple fans. They were a little concerned because Drayton had never been a head coach before, let alone even a coordinator. So there was that worry. There was that worry about, can he build a staff around him that's going to, turn the ship around? And then is he going to be able to convince these kids that he's not going to let happen what happened last year? Is he going to build those relationships with them? Is he going to build that trust with them? And, from what we saw of Drayton earlier on, he's been, a very upfront, honest guy. He tells it like it is. He has said that, he has preached that to his team, that trust was number one. He had to build that trust with them, and he had some hard conversations with guys. He said tears were shed in his office. But, at the end of the day, it was for the betterment of everybody. Those conversations needed to happen. And he heard the players out just as much as, they needed to hear him out. So, I think that went a long way in developing that relationship and going towards this season, building up that competitiveness and these guys wanting to play for him and showing that they're not going to quit and they're going to play till the final snap, the final whistle, and play for him, because they really do want to turn this program around. And I know you mentioned, like, last year, the team was in disarray, and I saw that too. A lot of people saw it, that the team quit in games. There's been players that have come out and openly said they quit in games. They wouldn't say why, but it's not good when you have players saying that they've quit in games, especially when it's a game that, they're supposed to be in love with, and they have aspirations of obviously playing on Sundays. So, I think that says a lot for Drayton in itself. And then obviously the improved play throughout the course of the season has been an upside as well. Like I mentioned, the Houston game a couple weeks back, Temple takes the lead 36-35 on Houston with a minute and a half left. And then unfortunately, the defense gets beat deep on a 44-yard touchdown pass, and they end up losing that game. But, the fact that you were competing with a team that was picked to finish in the top 2 of the American Conference this year, and had them on the ropes, and you almost won, that says a lot about what this team is potentially capable of moving forward.
Ryan, we don't even have to go. The Pirates don't even have to go back a year for players quitting, as they did last week in Senior Day. It is what it is, and that's my curiosity now is that we have you on, and we're talking friends, and we have a lot of friends watching and eventually listen. The big concern, I think, that some fans have for the Pirates is we got to that 6th game early, already bowl eligible, what you had to play for. And the one thing I want to bring up is the fact for Pirate Nation, we don't have a winning season yet. So, you have 2 more chances to have a winning season. And like we talked about all the show, like Temple, we were wondering, would it be a better improved Temple? Starting the year, you got a slow start, but now as the second half of the season, what you want is to see a team improving. So this is not an easy win for the Pirates. So you have to say, okay, they're going to have to play. In other words, they can't quit on plays this week in Temple. If they do that, Temple, you guys will blow us out. So I expect this team, both teams, to be fighting really hard because it's the last game of the season. I just find it really hard to believe as competitors that you would just give up, and especially knowing this is the last game of the year for the regular season.
Yeah, I do too, and I definitely don't think Temple is going to quit, and I think they want to come out and make a statement, especially after getting shut down by Cincinnati last week, and feeling like they've been robbed of a couple games this year, and not saying robbed because officiating bad calls or anything, but they've had 2 wins slip through their grasps in the final seconds of games. They lost in overtime to Navy. And then they lost to Houston, like I already mentioned, and really you could even say they have 3 wins because they excuse me, they had a chance to beat Rutgers earlier in the year. So, pardon me. So yeah, if those if that script, excuse me, guys.
He's getting all choked up. Getting all choked up talking about football.
Getting over a little bit of a cold. But yeah, if the script is flipped a little bit in those games, Temple could be possibly sitting here with 5 wins, and this game could be bowl eligible, but for bowl eligibility. But it's not. They still can get the 4 wins, which I think at the beginning of this season, if anybody was said 4 wins, that's really realistically what the expectation was. But I told you guys at the beginning of the season when I was last on that I believed that, as long as they were competitive in the conference, that was what was going to matter most. And they have been. And that's what I like to see. And that's what I think a lot of the fans would like to see. So, I don't think anybody penciled Temple in for being a top conference team this year, getting the bowl eligibility, anything like that. But, I think they've reached their expectations, if not exceeded them a little bit in terms of the competitiveness aspect in year 1.
Now, Ryan, go ahead.
Go ahead, Bubba. You go ahead, Bubba.
Now, Ryan, for the Pirates, Keaton Mitchell, second straight season with 1,000 yards and topped 1,100 last week with another 100-yard game against Houston. And tell us about the Owls' run defense and what Coach Drayton has said to the media this week in his press conference remarks about Keaton Mitchell and this East Carolina offense.
Yeah, I think when you look at the ECU offense, you see it has dynamic playmakers, and that's very obvious to see when you look on paper. Obviously, you have a very experienced quarterback in Holton Ahlers, who has seemingly gotten better and better each year that he's played the game. He's really reduced his interception numbers this year, still thrown for more than 3,000 yards, completing 67% of his passes. Like that's very impressive numbers. You mentioned Keaton Mitchell. Obviously, they saw what Keaton Mitchell could do to them last year. Obviously, he is a very talented back. And Temple has been a little susceptible to giving up yards on the ground once again, even though they've seen improved play in the front 7. Sometimes they just can't get that stop that they need in that regard. But at least there's a chance that they'll be better against the ECU Pirates this year in that regard. But then you still have the challenge of having to defend 2 really good receivers who could go over 1,000 yards for the Pirates, and Isaiah Winstead and CJ Johnson. So, and Temple has very inexperienced corners in that regard. They have a redshirt freshman in Jalen McMurray, and then a transfer in Dominic Hill, who's seen most of the reps at the position, but has also shown vulnerabilities of getting beat at times this year. So it presents a big challenge to them. And Drayton knows that. He's acknowledged that this is a team that has playmakers, and they're going to have a big challenge in trying to defend that and keep them out of the end zone this week. And I worry personally about Keaton Mitchell because I've seen this year, I believe didn't Eric Prince for Tulsa had a big week against Temple back when they played them. Navy necessarily didn't have the production that they normally do in that game, but they still found success running the ball as they usually do. South Florida's Brian Batty had a really good game against Temple, even though South Florida got blown out. So, there's been problems in that regard, especially late in games that Temple's defense just gets a little gassed, especially if the offense isn't, helping them and they're playing complementary football. So we'll have to see how that obviously plays out this week. But, as I mentioned, improved play in that regard. Temple's currently, I believe, first in the conference in tackles for loss this year. So that's a big change this year. And they've been able to get pressure on quarterbacks, which is something they could not even sniff last year. So I expect them to at least get a little bit to Ehlers and maybe force him to make some of those mistakes that we had seen in years past where he might turn the ball over because of some of the pressure that's going to be coming at him on Saturday.
And I saw an interesting stat earlier today. It was not all that surprising because I knew Keaton Mitchell had been right there near the top of the nation in yards per carry. But this is from Pro Football Focus on the college side. Keaton Mitchell, 25 rushes of 15 or more yards, leading the FBS. So that's something to certainly keep an eye on anytime Keaton Mitchell is getting the football, and it'd be interesting to see how much he is factored in the passing game as well on Saturday.
Yeah, guys, and just a quick point on that. I mean, hey, now that it's the last game of the season, obviously we are going to a bowl game, but you have several weeks to recover. So if I'm coaching this game, I'm trying to get the ball in Keaton Mitchell's hands as much as possible. 20 plus carries. I want to throw it to him because let's face it, at times he's carried this team this season. And, I'm just going to ride that, ride Keaton as far as I can in this game.
Yeah, and also even though Rajay Harris is out for the year, we have a great true freshman Ryan and Marlon Gunn Jr. To watch out. Those two guys have made a good to be a true freshman. I think Marlon Gunn is outdone himself. I mean, his there was no expectations. I think that people told us how he was in practice, Brian, but you know how that goes when people, this player, they overhype how somebody is in practice. Until you get in the game, how is that going to translate? And I think he's done a nice job. And so I agree with you 1,000%, Matt. I think that Keaton Mitchell is like, if you're the other team, when you see him with the ball, you like hold your breath because you know he's going to break one, and you just pray to God he doesn't break it and take it to the house.
And an aspect of this matchup that I'm really keeping a close eye on, I noticed the last couple games, obviously against Cincinnati, but even that game at Houston that you nearly won, Ryan, struggled to run the football. And I know perhaps Houston, not having seen the game, didn't give the Owls much reason to run it when E.J. Warner's throwing for close to 500 yards. And maybe they were just taking what was there. But tell us about the ground attack for Temple, because it seems like potentially the Pirates could make the Owls one-dimensional and get some pressure on the young quarterback.
Yeah, the Temple run game's been one-dimensional all year, unfortunately, and that's something that the fans have had a little bit of a gripe about with Drayton is the fact that, he was a running backs coach and the running game just has not found a way to get going other than that USF game, which Sadie ran for 265 yards. They haven't had a game where a person has gone for more than 100 yards. I think the high for the rest of the season was 61, I believe, in a game for a player. So, that's not ideal. And it'd be great if you had 3 or 4 guys running for 60 yards a game, but that's not been the case. It's been one guy running for maybe 40 and then another guy for 10, and that was about it. And that reflects, right now that Temple's, I think, 127th in the nation in rushing offense with just over 85 yards a game on the ground. So imagine taking that outlier away against USF, what that would be. They might be dead last in the nation in rushing offense. So I think that's been a bit of a concern. I get that they've been playing with a makeshift offensive line most of the year. I believe the number right now is they've started 9 different offensive line combinations this season in 11 games, and no back-to-back games has had the same offensive line combination. So that's been a struggle in itself, and that's why I think people are like, well, how have they even been competitive in certain games given some of the analytics of it? But Sadie has taken full control of being the primary back at Temple. I think his playmaking ability has shown that, especially after that USF game. He's able to catch the ball out of the backfield. He's able to make plays. We've seen him hurdle a couple defenders this year, so he does have that in his arsenal too. He likes to pull that out every so often. But other than that, you brought in 2 transfer running backs this offseason from Power 5 schools, and Darvon Hubbard and Jakari Norwood, and you were hoping that maybe one of those were going to be take the reins. They were going to be the next star back at Temple, and Norwood left the program after a couple games, is now in the transfer portal, and Hubbard's kind of settled in as being the backup now. So, I don't think you've got what you wanted in that regard as far as recruiting those guys out of the portal. And going back to what I said, I think that's why they really focused on bringing in 2 freshmen who possibly could end up playing a decent amount next year behind Sadie.
Ryan, I had a phone call that knocked me off, so I've missed the first portion of the show. So I don't know what's been discussed and what's not. So I'm just going to make a wide statement, and if it's already been covered, just kind of touch on it and move on. But obviously, Temple's record, 3 wins, not what you would want, but you guys are way improved over last year. Would you consider, no matter what happens Saturday, despite the record, year 1 of success? Because I think it is. I think you guys are clearly building and will be a good team again, probably next year.
Yeah, I consider this year a success so far from what we've seen. And I touched on this a little bit ago that, you've seen them be competitive in the conference. And I mentioned that on the show that I was on with you guys at the beginning of the season, is that, you wanted to see Temple be competitive in the conference again and not being blown out in every game and like happened last year. And they've done that. That there's been games where it's not been good offensive showings, hence Memphis and Cincinnati are the 2 ones that stick out to me. But other than that, they've scored double-digit points against teams. They've scored multiple times against these teams in the conference. They had a Houston team that was picked 2nd in the conference this year on the ropes and in the final minute and a half, and could have possibly won that game. They could have beat Navy, who obviously just beat UCF. So, they've had their opportunities, and I think you're just seeing that this being a young team, they have to just find the way to win now. They just have to put everything together and get over that next step, and that's what you're going to see hopefully in year 2.
Yeah, hopefully in year 2, not this Saturday. You're supposed to make you laugh there, Ryan.
Well, I didn't hear. I'm sorry, you cut out. What?
I said hopefully in year 2, not this Saturday.
Ryan's got his game face on. It's not time for jokes.
Yeah.
But
game week mode. It's game week mode.
Hey, Matt, or anyone for that matter, does anyone have anything else before we shift over and talk about special teams?
Yeah, Ryan, just a quick question as I ask you. I think probably every time you're on the show, something I really would love to see for Temple is that on-campus stadium. Any more talk about that, or is that something we just shouldn't even think about right now?
My editor conducted an interview with the athletic director at the beginning of the season as well, and as of right now, that hope and dream of an on-campus stadium has been put on the shelf and will not be discussed for a long time, is what we were told. They said, or the athletic director, Arthur Johnson, had said that, they play at a premier venue. The Eagles have been kind to them, even though I don't necessarily agree with that aspect of it. But, they feel that the Link is where they need to play. That's their best scenario right now, and that's where they're going to play for the foreseeable future.
All right. Well, hey, I don't agree with them on that. I want you guys to have an on-campus stadium, but hey, it is what it is, right? I don't want
Yeah,
to.
and I do too. I want to see them paint the end zones and have the Temple logo at midfield, not the Eagles logo that's faded off from the last Sunday.
How's the room for an on-campus stadium? You guys are kind of in downtown, right? So, is there room?
When the on-campus stadium really became a topic when I was at Temple a couple years back, they had a proposed location for it, which still is sitting fairly empty. It's where the old indoor facility was, and right now is just a little park per se, I guess you could call it, even though it's not really a park. It's got, couple pathways and benches, and it's just a bunch of grass right now. So there is a location for it. Like I'm sure I've mentioned in the past, that I think more the community backlash is what has held that up. And the city has said that they don't want to build another stadium in the city limits. But, the hypocritical thing there is now that the Sixers are going to be getting their own arena outside of Wells Fargo Center, and that's going to be right in downtown, in Center City. So apparently it's good enough for the Sixers, but not good enough for Temple.
I would maybe try to take the approach with the city of Philadelphia, and I guess you could say you could do this with the Link, but it's a large stadium. If you guys could build like a 30,000 seat stadium,
that's what I was thinking.
With the idea of hosting a bowl game in Philadelphia,
Yeah.
maybe sell the city from that aspect, get behind a bowl. I think Philly would be a great destination for a bowl, certainly better than Boston, Matt. Not quite as cold as Boston. And I'd much rather visit Philadelphia than visit Boston.
I got the name of the bowl, the Freedom Bowl.
Oh,
that's nice. Has a nice ring to it,
You could call it the Liberty Bowl, but that's already taken.
I know that's where I went, Kyle, in my brain. But outside of the Liberty.
Yeah, and we can't do the Independence Bowl. Can't do the Independence Bowl either.
Remember, you used to have the Freedom Bowl back in the day
in Birmingham.
Wasn't
it in Birmingham?
Yeah, you had the Freedom Bowl out in Southern California.
Okay. Oh, okay.
What bowl am I thinking of that was in Birmingham that had a similar name?
All-American Bowl.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
But you're right. You're right.
Southern Miss played. Was it Southern Miss played somebody in the All-American Bowl one time?
Yeah. Yes, they did. You're correct. It was when Favre was there. But we could go with the cheesesteak bowl. Something like that. Geno's or what's the one everybody compares Geno's and who else?
Pats and Geno's.
Pats and Geno's. Yeah, you could have the Pats and Geno's cheesesteak bowl.
There you go.
Well, yeah, I tell you what, Kyle read my mind. We're on the same wavelength this Thanksgiving. We're getting along. But the 30,000 seat stadium, you look at that Philly has great fans. I think the one problem I would say is that I would tell the city is give all the colleges and universities love, because you guys have great fans in Philly. It's a great sports town. It's just leaned way too much towards the pro teams. I'm not anti-pro teams, but that's one thing I would say, because you guys and USF need a on-campus stadium badly.
Ryan, what kind of stadium does Nova have?
What was that? You cut out.
I keep cutting out tonight. What kind of stadium does Nova have?
Villanova is, they're 17 miles outside the city, so
okay.
They're not in city limits, but they have a very small, I think couple thousand seat stadium out on that.
I'm trying to be creative. I'm wondering if Temple and Villanova could share a stadium. I don't.
And there's been talk that Penn would be the better comparison, because Penn has their stadium is in the city, and Temple actually used to play there back in the day, at Franklin Field. And, there's been mention that maybe that could happen, but I don't think that Temple wants to play on another college's campus. I've heard rumors that, there was possible talk at one point of Temple sharing a stadium with the Philadelphia Union soccer team.
Okay.
That went by the wayside. Again, the city did not want to invest in putting a stadium again in city limits. So the Union are stuck down in Chester County, and Temple is stuck at the link.
I like that idea right there. That's something
That's
I would
actually
still
good,
pursue. Is to share it with the MLS team, because you're going to have a smaller stadium. You could get them in the city limits, which would help with attendance for the MLS team. That's something that if I was the MLS team in Philly and Temple, I would be pushing for that together hard.
Yeah, and guys, just so you mentioned Franklin Stadium, right, Ryan, the home of Penn.
Yeah,
great
Franklin
movie,
Field.
great scene of a great movie was shot in that stadium. If you guys know where I'm going with this, the movie Unbreakable with Bruce Willis, there was a scene, correct me if I'm wrong here, Ryan, right, where he's the security guard in Franklin Stadium.
Yeah,
I didn't realize that. Wow.
And it's a beautiful stadium, much like the rest of Penn's campus, because that $60,000 tuition's got to pay for all that stuff. But beautiful brick facade on the outside, and it's a pretty decent sized stadium. I don't know this exact number, but I imagine it definitely holds more than 30,000 people. And Penn's a pretty solid team in their own right at the FCS level.
Yeah, Ryan, you can send your kid to Penn or a Bruce Springsteen concert. You get to pick which one. Or maybe Taylor Swift would be more for the younger crowd, but crazy stuff for sure going on there.
Are we talking about Ticketmaster now?
Yeah, I was just saying that Penn. He was talking about 60,000 a year. I said you have a choice of taking your kid to go to Penn or to go to a Taylor Swift.
Concert tickets are outrageous, man. The secondary market and scalpers have got to be stopped.
Yeah.
And then what I would advise people to do, if you really, the simple answer is stopping that, and then we'll get back on sports. Quit buying tickets off the secondary market, you assholes. Let them sit there with those $20,000 worth of tickets they bought and eat them one time, and that crap will stop.
That's true. If they would ban it, they just need to ban it for like a month or two. And all these people that gathered up all the tickets, they'll have to sell them for like $5, $10. I won't feel sorry for you. You can call me Grinch. You can call me.
I'm trying to get tickets to see Tyler Childers. Do you even know who that is, Ryan? Tyler Childers?
No, I do not.
Exactly. So he's an Appalachian country artist, and he's going to be in Raleigh. Sold out. The secondary tickets for Tyler Childers are going for $400 to $800. I'm like, kiss my ass.
Oh my goodness. But that's just been a real sore subject for me and Kyle, especially because we go to a lot of concerts and music and a lot of sporting events too. Man, you can forget about getting any cheap tickets.
It's gotten ridiculous, and it's really been in the last 6 months that it has gotten so bad. I don't understand it.
I mean, it's bad when you have somebody like Taylor Swift that maybe say a ticket's $200 or $300, like it's really high to begin with. And, so it's not on our day's standards, is not bad, but $2,000, like Springsteen has been notorious for keeping his prices low, and they're buying up, like Kyle and I were talking about last night, they're buying up like reasonable tickets, and all of a sudden,
they immediately resell them. And Ticketmaster has allowed reselling through their own website. And my original idea, I don't know why we're talking about this, but it's interesting to me and Dave. But
I was making a quick joke.
But my idea was to put a 60-day moratorium on tickets being, after they go on sale, have a 60-day hold before you can resell. But then people would just sell them on SeatGeek and places like that. So I don't guess that would even work if Ticketmaster did that. But anyway, now back to football.
Yeah, let's talk about football. How are I assume, obviously, with the tickets for the Lincoln pretty reasonable there? Like, was it $5, $10 for the tickets? I mean, what can you get the tickets to people that are coming up there to see the game, Ryan? Do you know, fan?
Yeah, they're pretty reasonable. I mean, I don't look at the tickets probably as much as I should, but there's not there's not going to be a big crowd there on Saturday, I'm sure, because students are still going to be home for Thanksgiving break, and obviously people don't come out to see a team that's 3-8, even though they have been competitive, and Temple's had that issue, going back since they were competitive in the American, that their attendance just has slowly dwindled, and I believe they have 4 games this year of attendance under 15,000 announced attendance, and it's definitely been announced attendance has been under that, or the actual attendance has been under that uh, announced attendance. But yeah, no, it's usually not too bad. You can get decent seats for 15-20 bucks, but then the ticket fees, of course, to email them to you, they add another 10 or 12 bucks on.
Yeah.
That's where it kills you. So I'm sure you could still find reasonable seats in the link for probably about 25 bucks.
Now,
Ryan,
Ryan, if I hop on a train from Connecticut and get down there, can you hook me up in a suite?
I don't know the right people for that.
Matt, you might be able to get a media pass.
The suites aren't very good.
Yeah, Invisalign has a suite there. I think that's where Matt works, Invisalign. So,
well,
hey,
Matt,
man, it's gonna be what, 53 on Saturday. You don't need a suite. You can be out. Hey, if you were able to go to that 2014 game, this will be.
Bubba, Matt had to have a suite in Greenville when we played Memphis. I mean, Matt's just big time. He likes a suite. He likes to be cushy. He likes to be pampered.
what's wrong with that?
That's true. He did go to a basketball game at the Smith Center in Chapel Hill.
Exactly. Yeah, cheese and wine.
Wow.
I feel the love. Speaking of the temperature, it's getting really cold right now on the show.
See what I have to deal with here, Ryan? You see what I have to deal with?
I see.
That was off the top rope right there, man.
Yeah.
Goodness gracious.
Ryan, I got a question for you, and I might have asked you this last time you were on. I don't remember, but I think I know the answer before I even answered the question or asked the question. With the American, with the changing conference members, with Charlotte, UTSA, Rice, et cetera, coming in, has there been a bunch of push from the Temple fan base to go back to the ATN and take football independent?
That's funny. Wow.
Yeah. Well, so Dave and I were talking about this in the green room beforehand, and
okay,
there were people in Temple's administration, and I won't name names, I won't give any indications as to who, but there were people higher up in the athletic department who were pushing for that to happen, because they felt obviously the rivalries in the A10 for basketball were outweighing the traveling, and they would bring more attention and relevance back to Temple, keeping the games more regional, which obviously is the benefit of the A10, getting those rivalries back, playing teams like VCU, Richmond, St. Joe's, LaSalle. I mean, they play those two latter teams every year anyway, but having that mean something a little more than just being a feel-good Big Five game. It's now a conference game. So yes, there were talks of that, but the athletic director and the president were not going to let that happen because, as I mentioned to Dave, football is the driving force behind the TV contracts right now, and that Temple wasn't going to forfeit their standing in the American to let that happen.
Let me ask you this follow-up. If television money goes away, right now we're around $7 million per school. If the television money goes away, and I believe it will sometime over the next 5 years, and let's say we go down to around $3 million per school, do you think that could change the opinion of the ADN president?
How much money did you say?
Around $2 to $3 million per school versus $7.
But A10, you said, is $1 million, right?
I think they're about $1 million, maybe a little less right now.
So you still would be taking a financial loss. You have to schedule independently in football. You got some regional opponents you could do, UConn, Army, obviously. They would be easy because they're independent.
Syracuse, Boston College.
Well, I'm just speaking UConn and Army about the Indy, so that would be easy.
Right.
But, Syracuse, Boston College, Buffalo.
Pitt.
UMass also is another one that's independent that would be a regional opponent.
Yeah. I think that's all going to depend on what happens with the next stage of realignment.
Yeah.
I think if there ends up being another major shift, which I'm sure there will be over the next 5 years, where the Pac-12 maybe dissipates, if the Big Ten snags a couple more of their schools, or I think that you're going to see a big shift in where, and we've already seen that the American has gone to a more southern focused conference, and I see what they're doing as far as with them releasing the schedule for next year, the next couple years with their matchup, the next 4 years with their matchups, that they're trying to keep Temple and Navy in that same pocket of being that Northeast draw, and that's why Temple and Navy are going to be that rivalry where they play each other every year. But I still don't see that as being enough, because Navy even tends to favor the South because of where they recruit. A lot of Navy's roster comes from Texas and Florida and southern areas. So, it's not enough to just have that. And again, like I've probably
Well, you can
said,
form a rivalry with Charlotte, because we sure as hell don't want to.
well, I sure as hell don't want them either. But
I love this guy. I love this guy. Yes. Matt's the only one.
nothing against UNC Charlotte, but
Matt's the only one that wants that rivalry, the Charlotte East Carolina one. He's the only one on the show. We're hoping that we can get him therapy or something to get him to realize it's not a real rivalry. So, right
now Matt can't wait to see the Charlotte new head coach Biff Poggi.
I just hope Biff don't. I just hope Biff doesn't have the sports almanac. If he does, we're screwed.
Biff's,
If you don't get that joke, I'm not going to explain it to you.
Yeah.
Now, I saw something earlier tonight. I'm sure you guys have probably seen Coach Poggi, wearing the sleeveless cutoff T-shirts and shorts on the sideline. So he says that he's going to continue to do that next season. So when Charlotte is playing at Dowdy Ficklin, Kyle, Coach Poggi will be on the sideline right there in front of you, wearing khaki shorts or whatever shorts and a cutoff T-shirt with a slit down the middle.
I'm gonna take a sign that says Biff hates manure. Again, if you don't get that, I'm not explaining it to you.
Wow.
I think just not for nothing. Now that we're picking on our good friends, the Charlotte 49ers, maybe we may all be proved wrong and have to be eating crow, but I think that was about the stupidest damn hire. I mean, it was between him and Skip Holtz. Skip Holtz, who has had success at East Carolina, has success at Louisiana Tech, just won the USFL. A guy who can build a program, experience, and knows the area for recruiting purposes. Yeah. But instead, you hire Biff.
I heard Skip may have turned it down.
Well,
that may not be accurate. But
if that's the case, then I still wouldn't have hired Biff. I mean, maybe we'll be proven wrong, but what a goofy hire. And I'll ask this to Ryan also, and then we'll get back on to actually exactly more of the East Carolina Temple game, unless y'all already discussed it the first half of the show. But Ryan, what did you think of the American not doing divisions? At first, I had no idea why they did that. For the life of me, I couldn't figure out why in the world they didn't do divisions. Then I figured it out. It's because they want to have first versus second. They want to have the two best teams playing for the conference championship, not necessarily the division champions, to try to secure a New Year's Six and come 2024 a playoff spot. So that's why they're doing that. But still, I just think it would make so much more sense to do divisions.
I do as well, and I've always felt that was. I always liked the division model, but I think we're starting to see a shift of where even in these super conferences they're going to do away with divisions because they want to improve their chances of getting more bids in the eventual expanded college football playoff, like you mentioned. And I think that's going to be very hard for the American now, obviously, with losing three very good teams. And
I think when they go to 12, I still think the Americans still. I think when you look at, I think East Carolina's rising, Temple's rising, Tulane, UTSA, Memphis. I still think UAB. Yeah, I still think we'll have a good shot once they expand to 12 and one group of five gets in. It can't be Boise State every year.
Right, and I think.
Go ahead.
I was going to say I'm hoping, and also another team that we really need to see than one of the new ones, the Conference USA, would be FAU. If FAU somehow could rise to the occasion, there's another one down there. But it's really really hard with everything going on right now to see, like, hopefully Temple and East Carolina, two programs that don't get left out. Like, in other words, what happens if there's a lot of what ifs here, but what happens if more poaching in the American, and all of a sudden you have a handful of teams left?
I think if there's more poaching in the American, we're headed to the Sun Belt to go regional.
Yeah, and Temple, I think that at that point, if it does happen, I think that's when they possibly go independent. Because their only option right now is the ACC, and I don't think that's going to happen.
Now, if you can get the ACC, I'd go ahead and do it.
Oh, yeah, but I just don't think that's going to happen unless, maybe some ACC schools start getting poached as well.
Yeah, that would be our dream too.
Obviously, if Miami or Florida State or Clemson or any of those schools get poached, Duke and UNC, one of those schools get poached, I think then Temple has a path to the ACC, but I don't see that happening anytime soon, at least.
We could partner up in Temple and East Carolina in the ACC.
That works for me.
Yeah,
fans tried to push it a couple years back.
We had the seriously, not to get off topic here, but we have with UNC and Duke. In fact, I was told a couple years ago that the Big Ten is trying really hard to get UNC, but UNC knows how big that rivalry is, and so they're trying really hard, especially basketball, and they are trying really hard. They said, "Hey, we're not coming unless you bring Duke." So if you have UNC and Duke go, and you have to the Big Ten, and you have Miami, Florida State, Clemson, a few teams, down south go to the SEC. I mean, hey, you can lose 4 or 5 teams just like that in the ACC. What does the ACC do? I mean, they can say all day long about market size and the value of the team, but at some point you got to say sustainability for the league.
If they lose 5 teams, if that were to happen, and we're speaking a lot of what ifs here, I would think East Carolina and Temple, South Florida, Memphis would all be attractive candidates at that point. I mean, if they wanted to survive as a league.
Yeah, you look at it because with USF and Temple, for example, huge television markets. You guys cannot be denied on that one. They can never say Temple is a small market when you guys are number 4?
Yeah, number 4 media market in the country.
Yeah, so kind of hard to say small media market when you're in the top 5, and Tampa is big as well compared to other markets, but that's going to be, and it seems like it's a domino, doesn't it? Like every single summertime, it was like the NBA, like where's LeBron going, and all of a sudden that's been scrapped now because you have to figure out where college football teams are going, what conference are they going to, and I agree with Kyle. I think the Pac-12, I think they're going to lose 4 more teams.
Yeah, probably. Ryan, if we get back to the game, I don't know if this has been discussed or not. How's your kicking game? East Carolina's kicking game has been a struggle all year. We've struggled with field goals, struggled with PATs. We've switched kickoff guys now. Our punter is very inconsistent. That's one avenue where we have been very inconsistent. How was your special teams overall?
At the beginning of the year, the kicking game in itself, as far as place kicking, was not very good. Obviously Temple wasn't scoring a whole lot at the beginning of the season, and some of those games, field goals would have mattered. And Drayton was being a little more aggressive, I think, in that he knew that field goals weren't going to win games, and he was passing up field goal opportunities. But when he did, they had a returning kicker in Rory Bell, who missed his only 2 attempts on the year, and then he proceeded to get benched and lose his job to Miami transfer Camden Price, who has been very solid since he took over. He's missed 1 field goal and 1 extra point on the year. He's perfect from inside 40 yards, so that's always a good sign. He has shown that he has a big leg. I mean, he had 1 field goal. I forget which game it was exactly, but he kicked it from beyond 40, and it would have probably been good from 60. That's how much leg he had on it. So he has shown that he has earned that job. And a couple weeks back, he broke the program record for most points in a game by a Temple kicker with 18, breaking Brandon McManus's record. previous school record. So obviously, again, breaking a guy who's playing on Sundays now record is a good sign for you that now you have a little bit of stability there. But Temple has just struggled to find kickers in recent years. They seem to have one good year and then they kind of fall off. So I guess we'll have to see how that plays out with him moving forward next year, because he will be returning to the team. But other than that, the special teams, as far as the return game, has been abysmal. That's one aspect that we were hoping to see improvement in, and they have not. I think they're bottom 10 in the nation in both punt and kick return this year. They've had some turnovers on special teams in that regard, as far as muffed punts, fumbles on kickoff returns. They had one last week against Cincinnati, so that hurt. But their punt game has been pretty solid. They brought in a Australian punter, Mackenzie Morgan, who special teams coordinator Adam Shire, he tends to favor those Aussie punters, as a lot of schools do now, because they have big legs and they just can get some different spin on the ball that American punters just don't seem to learn, or they're not taught it. But he's been solid this year. I think he went through the first 5 or 6 games without having a punt even returned. So that was a good sign. He was all net. But since then, has kind of tapered off in the regard of, at least, teams have returned the ball on him, but he's still, that hasn't been the glaring issue that it had been in last year, especially, that teams are just returning 20 yards every time and getting excellent field position. So Mackenzie Morgan's done a good job in that regard. But Temple's really going to need to see improvement, especially in the return game moving forward, if they're going to hopefully, again, turn the corner moving forward.
You look at the line on this game; it opened at 14. Last check, I think it's down to 10.5. So the money's going on Temple. It doesn't really surprise me coming off last week's performance. You guys have been very competitive. It's senior day in Philadelphia. Are you surprised to see the line moving in you guys' favor, or did you think it was too big, like I did when it opened?
Yeah, I'm not surprised that the line has gone down, like you mentioned, because of ECU's showing last week. I did not watch that game. I do not know.
You're lucky.
I do not know what happened in that regard, as far as it. I just was shocked when I saw the score.
We played like complete morons.
We stopped playing. We stopped trying on plays, and
there was a lot without giving too much inside info. There was some underlying issues going into that game that was not football related that cost us that football game.
Yeah, I was just shocked when I saw the score. I was thinking, oh wow, that's a team that Temple just took to the wire, and they just handed ECU a bad loss, a beatdown loss. And the way Temple's been playing, I'm not surprised that the money line has gone in favor of them. But I don't. I think Temple's going to be competitive in this game. I don't think it's going to be an easy game for ECU, but I think ECU will probably cover that 10-point spread.
I hope you're right. I personally don't think we cover. I think we win, but I don't think we cover. I think it's going to be a touchdown or less game. But I hope you're right. I hope we cover the 10.
I could see this game being, like a 34-21 type game. I'm in that area. I think Temple's going to give up some plays. We already talked about Keaton Mitchell and his ability, and the receivers that they have, and obviously Holton Ahlers being the veteran quarterback that he is. But I think Temple's going to give up plays. They've given up plays all year. They've shown that they're going to do that even in their sometimes best defensive games. They give up plays, especially.
Well, you guys are very aggressive, right? You blitz a lot.
They are, yeah. Stan Drayton has shown that he is not afraid to, pull out a fourth down, go for it on your own side of the field early in the game, and even if you're down only one score. And he trusts his defense, and he's lived by that all year. And like I said, going back to that honesty and trust factor, I mean, he really trusts these players, and I think that says a lot for the players, that they see that their head coach trusts him and trusts them, and he's willing to do that for them, so they're willing to play better for him.
Yeah.
And Bubba, I know that Johnny Robertson Jr. had a question.
Yeah, and JR chimed in on Facebook several minutes ago now, but he was asking about Quincy Patterson. He said, "What happened to Quincy?" He was getting some snaps in the red zone, but I noticed he hasn't played in the last several games. And he said, "Great kid."
Yeah, he was a guy that Temple was kind of running out there when Mathis was the quarterback in the first couple games of the year. More so to complement, I think, give teams a different look. But the thing with Quincy had been that everything was very predictable with him. And yeah, you looked at he attempted 11 passes, but he also ran the ball 28 times. He still sits as the team's third most carries, even though he hasn't played since like week 5 of the season. So I think that you could tell that everything was so predictable. Do I think there were times that Temple probably should have played him? I think specifically in the Navy game when Temple got down inside the 5-yard line and had a chance to win it there by punching it into the end zone. Yeah, probably so. I mean, the guy's 6'5", 250 pounds. I think you run him in a QB 3 runs up the gut 3 times. You would hope that he would get 4 yards on 3 carries. But he just has not factored into the game plan. And I think that was just the commitment that Temple has now to EJ Warner as being the guy. And they're going to hope that these running backs finally figure it out and the offensive line is going to finally figure it out and get some consistency going. And I think that's what they're trying to really do instead of throwing off the rhythm of the game and putting Quincy out there and possibly, losing 5 yards on a play because they call a predictable play.
Appreciate you chiming in as always, Johnny. And before we shift over and very quickly talk some hoops, because we know you were on hand in Brooklyn at the Barclays Center last night watching the Owls. Earlier we were talking about Franklin Field, and for our viewers that aren't familiar with Franklin Field, there you go. I know the Pirates and the Owls, I believe, played there multiple times in the 80s at least, and I know that 1983 season, East Carolina won a game. It was kind of an odd score, like 24-11 there at Franklin Field. Beautiful old stadium.
Seems like a much better home for college football than
I love that.
than playing at the link.
That's really nice.
Yeah, the only thing I don't like about it is the track. Otherwise, it's awesome.
Yeah, the track around the stadium gets on my damn nerves too. I can't stand that.
Yeah.
Craig was asking, I think you already addressed this, maybe not specifically numbers-wise, but he's asking about the attendance for Temple games.
Oh.
Yeah. Like I said, I think that every game this year the last 4 games have been announced under 15,000, and the actual crowd side has been far less than what the announced has been.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's been, tickets sold or whatever, their metric is and how they inflate those numbers, because every team inflates numbers. You know that every team does that nowadays.
No.
But,
no way.
But, I think obviously they had a very good attended game against Rutgers early in the year because of the proximity to Rutgers campus and that being such a close game as far as the old rivalry between those two schools. And that's I think what you hope for is having those types of games, because you bring in a lot more people. And that's why Temple really likes to have Penn State on their schedule, because that's a game where you're going to draw and fill the link, not just have 20,000 Temple fans there. That's a game you're going to have the upper deck open, and you're probably going to draw 40 or draw like 50, 60,000 people. Temple's got Oklahoma coming in a couple years, so I'll be interested to see how that game is attended. Obviously with Oklahoma's brand, and eventually they will have Penn State again on the schedule, I think in 2026. So looking forward to those marquee matchups down the road, especially if Stan Drayton can keep righting the ship and moving the program in the direction that it seems to be headed so far, that they could possibly have opportunities for some big wins in a couple years.
Now, Ryan, you mentioned that matchup with Oklahoma. Have you gotten the backstory on how that series that game came together?
Yeah, that one I'm not too sure about how that one came about. I know for a bit there while Jeff Collins was a head coach that him and Pat Kraft had really talked about trying to schedule ACC teams. And that's why you got the series with Georgia Tech. That's why you got this series with Duke that they have now. They have the Miami series. They were really trying to get those ACC teams in there. And I think that was pushing for that, you know, hopeful eventual invitation that maybe if you can start knocking off some of these ACC schools, you can show that you're good enough to possibly be in their conference. But the Oklahoma one was a head scratcher to me when I saw it. I was just like, okay, but obviously Oklahoma had been until this year a team that consistently in the top 25. Obviously a huge brand and is going to be an SEC team by the time Temple plays them, presumably in 2 years. So that could be a big marquee chance for Temple again. Like if Drayton continues this progress and EJ Warner is still the quarterback in year 3, and they build some a team around him with talent, and Oklahoma continues to just be mediocre. I mean that doesn't bode well maybe for the Sooners.
Yeah,
And I know
Oklahoma's not going to stay mediocre long. They'll fire somebody.
Oh yeah, I mean the thing is, I might sound crazy saying that, but if you look at the analytics of it, Oklahoma's kind of on the downward trend right now. Are they going to be able to rebound that quickly, especially with moving to the SEC?
They had a really bad, and for me, I don't know about you guys, but they had a really, really bad hire, in my opinion. I just don't like that hire. I know that he had ties to Oklahoma, but and that's why Oklahoma fans are really angry at Lincoln Riley, because they knew what was coming.
I think the hire. I think there was some logic behind it. I didn't hate it, but it so far. And who knows? Give them another year. I mean, they haven't been horrible, just not up to Oklahoma standards. But big change in philosophy going from what Lincoln Riley did to what he's doing there now. I mean, you're talking about two totally different philosophies as head coach.
That's right. And one of the things that the coaches make mistakes on is that they have. I know in a previous show, with Sonny Simmons, they were talking about Jimbo Fisher. A guy that's very stubborn. You got to go with the talent that you have, and what works with that talent. And I can run a system all day long and be the expert. I could be the guy that came up with a system, but if you don't have the players to match that system, then that's a huge problem. And I think that's what Kyle makes a great point there. I think that Oklahoma is in shambles right now for their standards, because you got a guy that instead of running what Lincoln did, you're doing that. You're running something else that is going to take a long time to get your players in. And Oklahoma will not be patient to let a guy 4 or 5 years do this. I mean, that's big money football with Oklahoma, to say the least.
Hey Ryan, shifting over to talk about hoops very quickly. As I mentioned, you were there last night as Temple fell to Richmond in the Vivid Seats Empire Classic at the Barclays Center, 61-49. Opened the season with an overtime loss to Wagner, but then you bounced back with a huge win over number 16 Villanova, 68-64. Also had a close call in an overtime loss to Vandy, and then you had a win over Big Ten foe Rutgers.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing right now with the hoops team is they've just been really inconsistent scoring the ball. They've been really inconsistent on defense, and they've been very consistent at turning the ball over. And those things are not recipes for success. And, not to knock Wagner, they're one of the better teams in the NEC, but that's a game that Temple on paper should have won by double digits. That's one that was an inexcusable loss in my opinion. You have a 15-point lead, I believe, with like 8 minutes left, and they end up losing that into overtime. That's just inexcusable. maybe it was salvaged a little bit by the Villanova game because that was the first win against Nova in 10 years for Temple, and now the Big Five runs through North Broad Street as it stands right now. But, then to go out and give up 89 points to Vanderbilt, who had scored 48 points in their previous game in an absolute thrashing was again inexcusable. I don't know what happened as far as the momentum coming out of that Villanova game. If things just were, the players' heads got too big, if they thought that they were overlooking Vanderbilt, I'm not sure what happened there, but they bounced back, like you mentioned, with a win against Rutgers, even though that was a sloppy game in which Temple had 20 turnovers. They still managed to win against the Scarlet Knights, a team that's been to the tournament the last couple years. I believe they're 34 in net rankings right now. So, that's another quad one win as it stands. So you presumably already have 2 quad one wins on the year. But then to follow that up and lose a heartbreaker to St. John's at the first game of that Empire Classic on Monday night, which, we were talking about in the green room, how frustrating that game was. Temple commits 21 turnovers in that game, but still had a chance. They took the lead by 2 with a minute and a half left, and then they gave up an 8-0 run to close the game, including, an and one layup for the Red Storm to take the lead back. And then same exact play happens coming down the court the next time, and they give up another layup, and that pretty much sealed it at that point for St. John's to secure the victory. And then last night was just a brutal first half for Temple. They again came out, had an early lead. I think they were up 9 points, and then they proceed to have a stretch of 8 minutes where they commit 11 turnovers, including 8 straight turnovers on 8 straight possessions. That's just not what Temple basketball has ever been built on. And as Aaron McKee said, that you're not going to win a lot of games when you're shooting yourself in the foot like that on a nightly basis. And that's so far as what it's been, the last 3 games, 58 turnovers. That's not going to win you a lot of games. And they just have to do some soul searching now as far as what their offense is going to be. I mean, you have guys that are capable of scoring. You have NBA draft prospect in Caleb Battle, who showed last night just how capable he is. I think he made 6 of 11 threes, finished with 26 points, clearly looked like the best player out on the court, but, nobody else really helped him. You have Damian Dunn, who obviously a Kinston native, who at one point through, I think, 3 games was leading the nation in scoring with 29 points per game, including a 38 performance against Vanderbilt. Again, nobody really seemed to help him out in that game, but, offense.
Yeah, Damien, get in the transfer portal. Don't put up with that crap.
Well, there's possibility he might be in the portal at the end of the year. Not that I've heard anything in concrete, but I've heard that he has pro aspirations, so he might look to maybe move on to a Power 5 school or somewhere else after this season, because he will be having his degree in hand.
Are you aware of how many Division I players come out of Kinston, North Carolina?
I believe we talked about it one other time, but it's a ridiculous amount.
Yeah, we talked about the green room.
They did a documentary on it on PBS locally on UNC TV once. It's the amount of Division I players, let alone NBA players. I couldn't give you a number, but it's astounding. I live right outside of Kinston, and it is so. Do what?
You used to play in the NBA, right?
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's so frustrating that we can never get any of these Kinston kids. Jerry Stackhouse did, Coach Vanderbilt from Kinston, obviously former Philadelphia 76er. It's so frustrating that we can't ever get any of these kids. Kinston's about 30 miles from Greenville, if you didn't know.
Yeah, and that's always been the thing, that you got to keep your homegrown talent home, right? And that's usually how teams win, especially if you're not one of the blue blood programs of the nation, like the Kentuckys, the UNCs, the Dukes, that you need to keep the talent home that's in your backyard. And Temple's been criticized for that as well in recent years, that they can't keep these Philly kids home, and that's possible why they've kind of fallen off from being one of the blue bloods that a lot of people tend to remember them being during the Cheney days. That people forget that Temple still is the 5th winningest program in NCAA history. But they've not had the same success that the UNCs, the Kansases, the Dukes have had.
Yeah, and that's one thing I think the American really needs. And I know you mentioned before the show in the green room that coach is in year 4 of a 5-year contract. He didn't get an extension after year 3, which is always a telltale sign that you're on the hot seat. You leave a coach with year number 4 of a 5-year contract, you're hurting his ability to recruit. So you're probably, unless he does something remarkable, planning on firing him, in my opinion. Temple needs to be good for the American going forward, losing Cincinnati, Houston, etc. Well, Temple needs to, along with Memphis and Wichita, they need to all 3 be good in basketball. So this league can continue to be a multi-bid league, which I think the league's, been disappointing at times in the amount of teams that have gotten into the tournament. You look at it and you think immediately, well, the amount of teams the American's going to get in is going to go down. But I think it's been so disappointing with the amount of teams we've gotten in recent years that if Temple steps up, if Wichita gets back to where they were, if Memphis steps it back up, we could still end up being about a 2 or 3 bid league every year like we have been, when we should have been being a 4 or 5 bid league.
I completely agree with you. And, you've seen, or we've heard rumors, obviously, of the NCAA tournament expanding. So, who knows what those numbers are going to look like if that happens. And, possibly then you are still a 2-3 bid league, even in the expanded. It's obviously not going to be as high quality of basketball. But I think that's, like you said, Temple needs to step up. Memphis needs to step up. The teams that are staying in the league need to be the ones that step up to make the league continue to be good. And they're going to point to that and be like, okay, so it wasn't just Houston, Cincy, and UCF carrying the league all those years. It was these other schools contributing to the competitiveness in the league. And I think you hit the nail on the head as far as that. There's been times that the Americans gotten snubbed in favor of the bigger leagues or the more premier basketball leagues. And I can guarantee you some of the American teams, if they would have gotten in the tournament, would have been competitive or more competitive than, like the 9th best team out of the Big East getting in the tournament, or the 9th best team out of the ACC getting in the tournament.
Doesn't the whole ACC get in automatically?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, Syracuse, though, like, they can finish 9th and they'll make a run to the Sweet 16 somehow. So, yeah, I mean, I can't knock them for putting Syracuse in most years because of that simple fact. But, Virginia Tech, if they're the 9th best team in the ACC, I don't think necessarily that they should get in the tournament.
No, and that's the thing with you're looking at least 3-4 bids that we should get every single year. And not every year, but I'm saying that we have quality.
I think there's a chance for the league, David. I don't mean to cut you off. I still think, you mentioned Temple, we mentioned Wichita, we mentioned Memphis. SMU's been good at times. Tulsa has a good program historically. And then UAB's coming in. A lot of people don't realize how good UAB. UAB was a basketball school for years and years and years before at Bartow Arena, before they started playing football. And UAB they used to love their rivalry with Memphis. So now they get to play Memphis again. It'll be interesting to see. UAB, I think, could really step it up. Not so much in football, and their football program's okay. But I think in basketball, getting to play Memphis again and getting to play Temple and Wichita, I think UAB could really become a good basketball program. And then they're not a bad basketball program now, but I mean, take it to the next level.
Right. No doubt. Before we let you go, want to talk some wrestling. Just get your thoughts. Are you watching wrestling? I know how much you love the AEW, like Kyle. So
no, I was actually at Extreme Rules when it was in Philly back. When that was the thing a couple months back. Yeah, what was that? 2 months ago now. Month and a half ago. Yeah. So I did get to see the return of Bray Wyatt, which obviously was very exciting. I love what they're doing with Bray Wyatt right now in the WWE. I love the character because I still can't figure out what we're going to actually see.
I think he's going to feud with himself.
You think he's just going to be himself?
I think he's going to feud with himself.
You think he's going to feud with himself?
Yeah, that's what it looks like to me. I don't know where they're going with it. I honestly don't know. I do love Bray Wyatt. I love his lineage. Son of Mike Rotunda, nephew of Barry Windham, grandson of Blackjack Mulligan. It's interesting that he forged his own path, does not rely on any of the lineage. There's rumors they're going to bring in Bo Dallas, his real life brother, to play his brother as the new Wyatt family, which I think would be cool if they do that because they are actually brothers. So the Bray Wyatt character is one that's very interesting. Love his promos. He's got that cool, Southern drawl. My favorite version of Bray Wyatt was the original cult leader from the swamps. That was my favorite version.
I was really partial to the Fiend. I didn't.
God.
I didn't like the Firefly Funhouse stuff necessarily. It was good for a laugh every now and then, but I liked the Fiend persona. I liked that, because I saw a lot of correlation to The Undertaker, who was my favorite growing up. But WWE just booked him horribly.
It was ridiculous. It was
in
ridiculous.
that regard. The whole Hell in a Cell match with Seth Rollins that they just called off was terrible. And then the whole Randy Orton feud there.
Well, they burned him alive, basically.
Yeah, burned him alive, and the whole result at WrestleMania there, when the last match we saw the Fiend, was terrible result when Alexa turned on him. I was just confused by that whole issue, but that's why Vince is now sitting on the couch at home, in addition to some other questionable behaviors on his part.
Yeah, I love Alexa. I love Alexa Bliss. Not so much in a wrestling ring. I'd love her somewhere else. But I'd like to pull a Vince McMahon on her. But I did not like that character. I'm glad she's done with that. But you like the Fiend. I love the cult leader from the swamp. There was a little bit of. Have you ever seen the movie Cape Fear?
Yeah.
No.
Okay, go watch Cape Fear. Not the version from the '60s, but the version that came out around '89, '90.
Yeah.
With who played in that? Matt, Dave.
That's Nick Nolte and Robert De Niro.
Nick Nolte, Robert De Niro, and one of my favorite actresses, a very young Juliette Lewis.
Woo!
Trashy hot Juliette Lewis. Go watch that movie and think about the Bray Wyatt cult leader swamp guy character while you're watching that movie, while you're watching Nick Nolte, and
I will do that.
And it's you'll pick up the correlation.
I will do that. Yeah, I mean, I love what they're doing with him right now. I love obviously what they're doing with the bloodline, because I don't see anybody on the roster that's going to beat Reigns. I mean, obviously the speculation is Cody Rhodes is going to be the guy that at least takes one of the titles, not both of them, I think, because it seems like there's been talk that they want to split the titles again, because USA is tired of not having a world title on their network. But I like.
How do you do that? How do you book?
I just love what Roman's doing right now. He's improved on the mic tremendously from his early days, and Seth Rollins is obviously still a top guy in the company. I love what the Brawling Brutes are doing right now.
Terrible name.
I love what Imperium's doing. I love Gunther, former Walter. I wish they would kept his name as Walter, but
Walter. You say it with a V in German.
Yeah, Walter, the Austrian.
Gunther's great. Gunther. I think from NXT, I think it's time to bring up Steiner Kid, Braun Breaker.
Braun Breaker.
Change his name to Braun Steiner and put him on the main roster. You talk about somebody who could be a contender for Roman Reigns down the road. Mm-hmm. I think if you bring Braun in and change his name to Braun Steiner, I think with his physicality, maybe a year from now, I think him and Roman Reigns could have some good matches. I want to know how you split the titles. You mentioned splitting the titles, and I wish they would do the same, but I don't know how you book that. How do you book to split the titles? Do you do a 3-way match? I don't know how you book that. In what way does Roman want to defend one of the titles but not the other? I think they've put themselves in a
I'm assuming they're going to do something along the lines of maybe like with the Royal Rumble winner that you can only challenge for one of the titles, not both of them, and Roman might have to fight 2 matches at Mania. Maybe that's how they're going to book it.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense.
That's what I could see happening, maybe. But I'm not sure. That's what I love about what they're doing right now, because
They missed an opportunity. They could have done that with the Money in the Bank, where they split the titles.
yeah, and they blew. Well, yeah, that was atrocious. Cashing in.
Well, since when do you cash in the Money in the Bank for the U.S. title?
Yeah, for the U.S. title on a night when it was an open challenge. That was confusing to me, but I like what Austin Theory's done since he lost that Money in the Bank. I think he's been putting in some great promos. He's putting in some great matches, and that kid just looks the part now. He does. He reminds you of a young John Cena.
He does.
And
I love Bobby Lashley, but Bobby Lashley needs to be a heel. He cannot talk. He's not convincing as a talker. He needs to be back with MVP as his mouthpiece. I wish Bobby could be a babyface, because he is such a physical specimen and a genuinely good guy, but he just cannot talk.
Yeah, I agree. He messes up his promos far too often for being a guy that's been in the industry, 20 plus years now.
Oh.
I agree. I thought that the whole Hurt Business dynamic was outstanding. How he was just, come in, kick ass, leave, destroy things, beat the hell out of Brock Lesnar. I just love that whole aspect, and I like how now that Brock has kind of become a guy that he's there to help push younger talent.
Yeah, how about Brock? Never a guy that could cut promos. It was with Heyman, and all of a sudden, as a baby face, can cut promos in a weird, goofy way.
Yeah, and I saw that initially when, he won Money in the Bank, and he was doing the Party Boy Brock character when he would come out and, pretend the Money in the Bank briefcase was the stereo. I thought that was hilarious, and I was like, wait, Brock actually has a sense of humor other than being a badass? And we've seen that more now, that it's like, Cowboy Brock, but he's still the badass that he always was.
No, it's interesting. I never would have expected that Brock would have been able to do I'm friendly Cowboy Brock, and it worked. And somehow it does, and inexplicably it does. But we talked about that, and we'll finish up the wrestling talk here and quit boring people. But we touched on it in the green room. I know Ryan's a wrestling guy, so am I, and we were talking AEW beforehand and what they're doing, and the complete cluster that organization is. At least they did one thing right, putting the title on MJF. And so I guess Dynamite's about to go off right now. Might have to go back and watch a little bit of that and see what MJF's first Dynamite as world champion was like.
Yeah, there's so many good wrestlers that have come through there, and then they stick to just the wrestling and not the gimmicks. That's my thing with AEW.
The gimmicks are great. You just silly gimmicks are the problem.
That's what I'm alluding to. Yeah. Anyway, enough of that. Ryan, you're the best. I appreciate you very much. And definitely we'll have you back on, obviously, with basketball season. It should be the weather should be good, especially for Temple standards and with Philly. So we'll see how that works out, and good luck to you guys. And
what are you doing for Thanksgiving, Ryan, before you go?
Yep.
What was that?
What are you doing for Thanksgiving before we let you go?
Going over to my aunt's house with my family. Just gonna have a nice casual evening watching football, catching up with family. First Thanksgiving without my grandmother, who passed away back in April, kind of unexpectedly. So,
oh man,
gonna be a little sad at first, I think, but it'll be good to see some family that we haven't seen in a little bit, and just catching up and unwinding from the last couple days. Like Bubba mentioned, was in Brooklyn the last 2 days, drove back today, and then I got to go back up to Philly on Saturday for the game, and then Sunday they got basketball again. So going to be on the roll this weekend. So going to be this is going to be my relaxing time tomorrow.
Well, sorry for the loss of your grandmother, and hope you enjoy your Thanksgiving. And I'm sure she had I'm sure there was a dish she probably always made that somebody's going to try to make and not make as good as grandma. So go ahead and expect that. But I hope you enjoy your Thanksgiving.
Thank you, you guys as well. I appreciate it.
Happy Thanksgiving
to you all.
And one more thing, how can people follow your work?
Of course, you can always follow me on Twitter at Ryan Wallen 247, which is my screen name. And you can follow us at owlsdaily247 on Twitter or go to owlsdaily.com.
All right. Sounds good, brother. Appreciate you very much. Drive safe, be safe out there, and we'll talk to you again very soon.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. Happy Thanksgiving.
Same
Thanks,
to you, brother. Have a good one. All right. It's good to have Ryan on. Appreciate that.
As a guy that I'll say it before and I'll say it again, as a guy, we deal with a lot of media people. For whatever reason, Ryan Wallen is my favorite of all the people from all the schools we have on. I have no idea why, but and if he hears this, I don't care. I'm not embarrassed. Dude's great.
Yeah, especially talking the wrestling. I mean, most people, they might know some wrestlers from the past, but certainly not the current. So that's really cool, and being able to stay on with us a long time. So great stuff there. Guys, do you have anything before we get out of here? We've gone a little long tonight, but certainly anytime you can talk Pirate football, we're all about it.
I think we put Matt and Bubba to sleep with the wrestling talk.
They're back.
So here's a question, guys. Here's a question. What do you think? Politics at the dinner table on Thanksgiving? Yes or no?
Oh,
No.
hell no. Well, it depends, man. It depends. If everybody's on the same page and you know it, yes, sure, go for it. But if you know there's dissenting opinions, hell no. I actually, it's funny you mentioned that. I'm gonna piggyback off that, Matt, and then you go back to it. We were in Hobby Lobby tonight. I don't know if you guys have those up there, Matt, but we were in Hobby Lobby tonight in one of their mini Christmas sections, and two employees were stocking shelves discussing politics. I told Jessica, if I was the manager of that store and I walked up on two employees discussing politics that openly in front of customers, their asses would be written up on the spot.
Well, especially, wasn't Hobby Lobby like some controversial? Wasn't there something with Hobby Lobby a few years ago?
Yeah.
I don't know. Probably they're religious. They're closed on Sunday, and you ain't allowed to have Christian opinions on anything. So probably.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
it was about birth control being covered, I believe, or.
Oh, well, no, I disagree with that. I think birth control should definitely be covered under their insurance.
It was something like that, but anyway, it was something along those lines. But I would say, Matt, so you have a choice here, guys. You're a NC State fan. You have family that's NC State, Carolina, like I do, to the whole 9 yards, right? And Thanksgiving and Christmas can be a little challenging. I think in my family, we don't talk very much politics. There's always that wink of like, when I see the NC State family, they'll give me a hard time about that unfortunate one point loss Labor Day weekend. I think that for my family, on my dad's side especially, the sports rivalries are what gets us in not trouble, but there's a lot of bantering back and forth. It doesn't get heated like you would think, like politics, but that's something that is that can be a little interesting.
Where do you stand, Matt? Politics at the dinner table?
So here's my thing. I don't ever bring up politics at the dinner table, ever. I pride myself on not bringing it up. But if you have that one family member that brings it up just to kind of push buttons, then you have every right to fire back. That's my feeling on it.
Who is that family member, Matt?
Well, I won't get into names. How about that? There's too much. There's a lot of love there, but I won't get into names. But I'll just say, if that one family member decides to push buttons a little bit, then you know what? All bets are off.
Yeah, I kind of try to stay away from it if there's dissenting opinions. I'm with you. If one person starts it, you have the right to finish it. But I think primarily with my family, I used to be the outlier. I've kind of become more neutral. So it can be talked about probably at my family Thanksgiving. Okay. Although I'd rather not. I'd rather talk football or something else.
Yeah.
Right. Movies, something non-confrontational.
Yeah. Are you going to go see the new Avatar?
I haven't seen the first Avatar.
I haven't either. Am I the only? Okay, you and I, Kyle, have.
It doesn't appeal to me. I don't know what the hell it is. I mean, what are these people blue for? I don't want
Looks
to
like
watch
it's going to be a huge record at the box office.
What the hell are these people blue for? That was great.
I'm not touching that one, but
Well, I'll tell you what, guys. Talking about movies, my brother texted me tonight. Apparently, he's watching on HBO I don't really know how it. I'm surprised it's not a theatrical release, but
Christmas
the
Story
new
Christmas.
Christmas Story, yeah.
Yes, it irritated the piss out of me that it was HBO Plus. It's HBO Plus or whatever they call their subscription service, HBO Max. Exclusive, and I thought maybe it would be HBO Max plus theaters. But the surprising part about this, Matt, is it is getting good reviews. People are shocked at how good it is, particularly the average Joe. Movie critics have been mixed on it, but the average Joe, it's got like a 90% approval rating on Google.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad to hear that. I'm glad to hear that because the first one's a classic, and you never want to follow up a classic with a bad sequel.
Oh, they did. They made a bad sequel years ago. There's already been Christmas Story 2. It's horrible.
Yeah.
It was a straight to DVD release. But this one with the original cast, Peter Billingsley returning, pretty much the dude that played
Scott Farkas, right?
Yeah, Grover Deal, who we had on the show, he's in it.
Yeah. I'm sorry, Dave. I mean, I was gonna say I was just hoping for a big theatrical release because I
want to go see it in the theater too.
I specifically remember seeing that movie in the theater when I was a kid. I want to say I think it came out in 1983.
That's
so I was
correct.
about 7.
Yeah, I was 10. It came out,
and I remember it vividly. And I was hoping.
Matt, were you not on the show when we had Grover Deal on?
I was not on the show. I think I was traveling.
Okay.
But I remember that it was last year. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I was just hoping for a theatrical release. But what are you going to do, right?
Yeah, I think it was a bad. I mean, I guess HBO thinks here's what's going to happen because I'm going to do it. I'm going to subscribe to HBO Max. I'm going to watch the movie, then I'm going to immediately cancel my subscription so it doesn't renew the next month. So unless you're a complete idiot or it's not going to get new subscribers to HBO Max. I'm not going to keep it. I got enough streaming services. I'm going to get it to watch the movie, then I'm going to cancel my subscription. So I think it was a business strategy, but I don't think it's going to work for them.
I think that's part of it, and I think that they thought because of the 2 other sequels that were bad, really bad, they didn't give it a chance, and I think that was a big mistake because this story.
Wait a minute. Are you including My Summer Story?
There was
a bad
2.
Sequel?
No, I read an article. There was 2 sequels. One was straight to DVD. There was another
Story 2, and there was another one called My Summer Story that came out in the early '90s, which I didn't think was a bad movie at all. It was a huge box office failure because none of the original cast was in it, but I didn't think that was a bad movie.
Johnny Roberts said that Grover show was a classic. Yeah, like he's one of my Facebook friends, so I had him. Yano Anaya.
Yep, and he's in the movie. I checked the cast the other night to see if they revived his character in the movie, and they did. He's in it. So I need to watch it. I'm going to watch it probably sometime between now and Sunday. I'm going to subscribe to HBO Max just to watch it. And I'm like you, Matt, though. I really wish it would have been in theaters. I would have gone to see it.
Yeah, I think another thing, guys, is that Christmas Story is right up there with Home Alone. You got a whole bunch of movies that are classics.
I think it's past Home Alone. I love Home Alone. I would put Christmas Story on the same level with
Wonderful Life.
It's a Wonderful Life.
Yeah,
Christmas Story. Yeah, those they're like. I would say Home Alone would be a step down. I like Home Alone a lot. I'm not putting down Christmas Vacation would be another one I would put on the same tier as A Christmas Story and Wonderful Life.
There's certain movies you watch and specials you watch every year. You never miss. And so those like that or Christmas Story. I thought Alexander, he was like 3 or 4 years old, and I put it on and I thought he would be bored by it. And he literally was like glued and like,
there's something very captivating about that movie when you're a kid.
He loved it. And I was like, got in major trouble with the wife at the time. So
why?
Because I was trying to get him to sleep. I thought he would be bored by it. He was big into animation, with the cartoon. But he's like, Dad, wow, this movie is cool. And he sits up in his bed, and I was like, wow, I'm in trouble.
You wanted to bore him. You should have put on like Home Alone 2. Home Alone 2 is horrible. Or forget that. Let's go Home Alone 3.
No, the Home Alone 3. I can deal with the second one. The third one, oh my God.
Well, Home Alone 2, there's a couple parts in that movie that really annoy me. The one where he's talking in the clear in movie marketing where with the talkback toy where he talks into it. I hate that.
Yeah, and the pigeon lady annoyed me. Get out of here.
Yes.
But I'll tell you guys, since we're just talking about movies, I love to talk movies. One of my favorites that is incredibly underrated, and for years, just no mention of it. I'm not sure if you've ever seen it. It's a movie with Nicolas Cage. It's called The Family Man.
Oh yeah, yes,
Yeah.
Great movie.
Yeah, good, very good movie.
Very underrated.
What's his real name?
What's that?
What's Nicolas Cage's real name? His real last name?
That's a good question. I have no idea.
Dingleberry.
And there was Coppola. His uncle is a very famous director, Francis
Ford Coppola. Okay.
And he wanted to be out on his own.
Well, Nicolas Cage is a time traveler.
Yes.
It's well known. There's actually a photo online. I'll show it to you of a guy from the 1800s that looks exactly like Nicolas Cage. It is. I mean, it's not even similarities. It's like his doppelganger. So there's been a theory that he's a time traveler ever since.
Well, he is the only guy that could make at least 300 movies and be completely bankrupt. How is that possible?
Have you ever seen The Weatherman?
The Weatherman.
Yeah, not Wicker Man, but The Weatherman with Nick Cage. That is a weird damn movie. Go watch The Weatherman.
What about Wild at Heart?
I've never seen Wild at Heart, but if y'all haven't seen The Weatherman, if y'all want to see a weird Nicolas Cage movie that is good, but it is weird as crap.
What about Leaving Las Vegas? That was good.
Yeah, I still want to go with The Weatherman. You guys have got to see that.
Okay. And by the way, let's do a Thanksgiving movie that I love very much. Planes, Trains, and Automobiles.
I'll give you another Thanksgiving movie, and I cannot think of the name of it. If one of y'all can help me with this, it stars Ed O'Neill. Came out in the early '90s. He picks
with the kid.
Yes, he picks him up. He picks up his wife, or excuse me, his girlfriend's son.
Yeah.
Say again, Matt.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of the name. It's not coming to me, but I know what you're talking about.
Great movie, based on Thanksgiving.
I looked it up.
Dutch. Yes,
that's
right.
To Save My Life. That was a really good. I forgot about that. Great recall, Kyle. That was good. I'm a huge Ed O'Neill fan. I love Married with Children, so of course I watched it because I love that.
Where do you guys stand on Miracle on 34th Street? I love the black and white version and the remake.
Good movie. Good movie. I like old movies, so that's like.
And the black and white version holds up, and I love. To me, what makes that movie good is the ending. It's genius. How do you prove Santa's real? All the letters from the post office are brought to him at the courthouse. So an agency of the government recognizes this man as Santa Claus. So the judge has no other reasoning but to rule that he is Santa Claus. I mean, it was genius. I mean, that is freaking genius.
Yeah, great. A lot of great old movies that are holiday movies. So for sure.
Yeah. John, who found that? Matt, Bubba, did you find that?
That has to be Bubba. That's
yes.
Bubba.
Yeah, there you go. See, that looks. Oh. You tell me right now, Nick Cage isn't a time traveler.
Wow.
That is really scary. That's spooky, man. It's so close.
Yep.
Wow.
That is crazy.
All right, fellas. I want to wish each and every one of you happy Thanksgiving. I'm thankful for all of you guys, and I'm thankful for our listeners, our viewers. Thanks to everyone in Pirate Nation and beyond. We have people that actually watch us and listen to us. They're not in our fan base, so thank you as well. I'll be nice. It's Thanksgiving. I'm gonna get along with them also. So we'll do that. Do you guys have anything about Thanksgiving before we get out of here?
I just enjoy your time with your family and friends. If there's anything with what I've dealt with in the last few months, you never know when it could be your last one. So enjoy the time with your family and friends. Eat a lot. Matt, have some damn pecan pie.
God, I was just gonna say, eat apple pie, not pecan pie.
Actually, neither one of them would be my favorite. If I had to choose a favorite, that's hard for me to say. Probably lemon meringue.
No, cherry pie is Kyle's favorite, but that's all.
You damn right. But I think Matt would agree with that too.
No doubt.
I probably go with a lemon meringue or either a chocolate chess pie.
Ooh,
pecan.
What in the world?
It's a parrot.
I'm just picking with Kyle because of the pronunciation, because I know that became a big topic in the past.
Well, it is pecan. It ain't pecan.
Pecan.
It's pecan.
Pecan.
Where are
It's
y'all
not-
from
it's not
saying
PEE.
pecan?
It's not like you're peeing. You're not peeing.
Well, how do you say the word PEA?
P what?
PEA. How do you say that? Isn't it PEACAN? Is that not how you spell it?
PECAN. Yeah.
Pecan.
Pecan.
Pecan. There you go. Thank you, Matt. See, Matt's from North Carolina.
Pecan.
No, pecan.
Pecan.
PE
Where
is
does
not,
the
so-
con? Where does the con come from?
Pecan.
I don't know, but how about the fact that Bubba? I thought he fell asleep 2 hours ago, and he came out of nowhere with that Nick Cage time traveler picture.
And then a robot saying pecan. Pecan.
It's a parrot. It's a parrot on his shoulder.
Hey, if we got any viewers left, type in the screen. I don't know how you would do that. I don't know how the hell would you type
Justin
in how you
Buck
say it?
buttermilk
If you say
pie.
pecan or pecan.
He says buttermilk pie.
Buttermilk pie. Never had it. Familiar with it. Wouldn't mind trying it.
Yeah, it's pecan.
It's pecan.
But something what I was referencing, Dave, that I wanted to chime in with. This is something that probably, or at least to some, went unnoticed last weekend due to
Wait 1 second, Bob. I don't mean to cut you off, but I do want to settle this. There's one person amongst us who actually knows how to make the damn pie. Jessica, how do you say it? Pecan or pecan? Pecan. There you go. She makes it, so she wins.
Johnny says pecan. Thank you, Johnny.
Well, Jessica, unless Johnny can make it, shut the hell up. Jessica makes it. She says pecan. So there you go.
Do you say vehicle or is it vehicle?
I say vehicle.
It's vehicle.
A vehicle.
The hick is in the vehicle.
Vehicle. Well, maybe the hick isn't the vehicle, but it's vehicle. It's a damn truck's what it is. But
vehicle.
Vehicle. That's a vehicle. Yeah, vehicle.
How do you say it, Matt? Do you say vehicle or vehicle?
Well, that's a Southern thing. Matt's going to say vehicle because that's a Southern thing. I'm not ashamed to be from the South.
Nor am I.
Vehicle. Oh, you've never had chicken mold, Dave. You're not even from Williamston.
It's in Beargrass. Yeah, I know. I know all about it.
But you've never had it.
Listen, I'm looking forward to hosting all you Southerners on December 17th at Fenway, and I'm looking forward to having all you guys up here.
There you go. So who just said they agree with me and Jessica? Who was that?
Yeah.
Well, Justin's a very smart man. So
he is smart, man.
And he drives, and that son of a bitch drives vehicles.
Vehicles, that's right. See, there you go. Hey, Matt.
We'll have to go live walking into Fenway Park eating some pecan pie.
Eating pecan pie.
Sounds good, man.
Good. Yeah, and Matt, by the way, when we're up there, I have got to go to the Cheers bar, as corny as that is, and I also want to have those Italian restaurants you're telling us about. I'm dying to eat that.
Well, we haven't got the invite to Fenway Bowl just yet. So
it's coming.
I hope not. I hope we go to Myrtle Beach, but much closer. I heard today, I spoke with someone who's pretty high up in the Pirate Club that said that Pirate Club, that there are people in the Pirate Club that are pushing for Myrtle Beach. So I'll just say that much.
The Myrtle Beach is good for us as far as gas tank. It's good for you personally, obviously, which is great. I'm not like stumbling my nose, but man, Fenway, you get to play the first one. I love to see here's what I'll say about both.
What if the ACC doesn't fill that spot? If it's
I know that's what that's where I was going with it. If we have like a really bad matchup, then yeah, I wouldn't be high on that. There you go, Justin. We'll do it. Where everybody knows your name, Justin. We know your name. You're awesome.
Yeah.
No doubt.
Justin, can I ride in the equipment truck? I will not be in Boston.
No, I said Bubba wants to drive it. You missed that. You were on the phone call. Bubba wants to drive that rig.
Bubba, you got your CDLs?
He does.
Not that class.
You got Class B, not Class A.
That's
okay,
right.
You got to get Class A. Bubba, you can get your Class A and just become a long haul driver. Just give up teaching, just drive a long haul.
I'm sure.
Start you in the back. Bubba drives an 18-wheeler. Got the name for it already.
Oh, that's right.
But last weekend, the element of the game that I was saying perhaps went unnoticed, considering the Pirates just were able to kick off twice due to only scoring 3 points, and that's Laith Marjan. And Laith Marjan was kicking off.
Well,
and,
Justin, as I appreciate that, you don't want me driving anything. But go ahead, Bubba.
Laith did a good job kicking off and had some good hang time and took over those duties for Owen Daffer. And it'll be interesting to see if he wins that competition once again this week.
Boy, you think Owen's going to transfer out of here come December? I'd be willing to bet $100 on it.
Well, I think a change of scenery might just be what's best for him. You know,
Yeah.
I don't.
Sometimes when you have this type of year and some bad luck, obviously, it's at his age, it might just be a good thing. So, we shall see. But
He's only a sophomore, and Coach Houston really likes him. So I could lean not to be a waffler there, but I could lean on both. Yes, he will, and no, he won't, because he's had a really tough year. But Coach is, I think if he were going to transfer by now, we would have known, but maybe not. I mean, you still have plenty of time to transfer, obviously.
Well, he was still playing until last week.
Yeah. But Coach said that it's going to be a constant competition. So in other words, he hasn't lost faith in Daffer, like having a conversation with him in his office, like, look, I think the world of you, but you're just not going to play anymore. Like that kind of, I don't think it's at that point yet. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm not in his office and I'm not that close to the program to know, but just by the way he was talking about the press conference, it wasn't, I don't think he's lost 100% faith in him. He was just talking about every week, every position, which it should be, as a competition.
Yeah.
So, Bubba, what about you? About Thanksgiving movie? We were talking Christmas movie. Any food that you like to eat before we get out of here?
I know Bubba's favorite. I know Bubba's favorite Thanksgiving food. I can go ahead and answer it for him. Sweet potato casserole with pecans.
There you go.
So you admit it's pecans. Very good, sir.
No, I knew that was.
Hey, we're kind of like a house divided. The
Sweet
top
potato casserole with the crusty pecan topping.
Hey, Bubba, have you noticed that? It's funny. The top half say pecans, and the bottom half say pecans. It's just funny. Bottom half of the screen, if you're listening.
We're listening, and we're correct.
House divided. It's all good. It's healthy debate. I think it's fun.
Any of you guys ever had a turducken?
A what?
Wasn't that a John Madden thing back in the day? The turducken.
It's a real thing. It's a turkey stuffed with a duck, stuffed with a chicken, and you cook it all together, and it's layered and seasoned. It's a Cajun thing.
Wow, sounds pretty damn good. I've never had it, but
yeah, I've never had it either, but I'd like to. Duck is very flavorful, so I would imagine it would give incredible flavor to the turkey.
I learned something tonight. I did not know that.
Yep.
All right, fellas. I want to wish you guys, I'm thankful and appreciate you guys. Hope you have a great Thanksgiving. Please be safe. Matt, I hope that you go to the game on Saturday, bring home a victory. I want to try to go up on Saturday night to Norfolk. Maybe I can get a victory. So if you go to Temple, I'll go to ODU and we'll get 2 wins out of it.
Hope so, buddy. Hope so. Sounds good.
And I've been on the phone texting. I'm trying to get you a suite there at Lincoln Financial, but nobody's returning my calls so far or text. So I don't know. You might be on your own. I don't know. All right. We're going to get out of here. Thank you so much. In fact, we've got great programming. Don't forget, coming up on Sunday, we'll have what in the world?
My dog wants to play all of a sudden.
Oh, okay. The toy. I didn't know what in the world it was. Appreciate you, Justin, very much. Don't forget, on Sunday night, we'll have the Pirate football playback. It's right here on the Sports Objective. And we appreciate L&K Custom Homes. Kevin Walker, appreciate him, his support of the program. And Bubba, a lot of great programming through the week, but that'll be our next program. We're taking tomorrow night off, so there will be no Inside Slant for obvious reasons. It's Thanksgiving, and we don't want our families to kill us. So we're taking tomorrow night off. But enjoy your Thanksgiving. Wish you guys all the best. Until next time, I'm Dave Richmond, and as always, go Pirates.
919, copy that. Everybody in the stands go bananas, scream loud, but they don't hold back. Every foot, every yard, every first down, every